Well, welcome everyone to the Fit Beaute Report Podcast. I'm your host, Christina. Today in the studio, we have a special guest, and I'm very excited about this episode. So, Pablo, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode to talk about legal issues in the Web3 space. Hello, Pablo. Welcome.
What's up? What's up? So good to see you again. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate you.
Yeah, definitely. It's so great to have you as well. So, Pablo, tell us a little bit about how did you get involved in the crypto space?
Sure. So it's a long journey that I won't bore everybody with. I'll keep it short as I can. I'm a retired police officer from New York. Retired early, and I became an attorney. Went to law school, passed the bar, became an attorney. I got a job organizing these very large political conferences in New York and Puerto Rico. Also, it became international. We used to organize conferences in Dominican Republic. I've done organizing conferences in Miami. And so through that experience, I was not practicing law, right? I was just basically understanding how to bring people together, how to discuss law, how to read into these statutes and help to explain to them, right, to the public what the law is, because my goal has always been to make the law accessible to everybody. So I got into the startup industry. I had a tech startup based on travel. I also have a 501c3 nonprofit that's called Nexus Latinx. And basically, the past couple of years, I've been paying attention to the crypto space. I've been very interested into the crypto space. I just never found the right job for me to jump into the crypto space and work in it full time until I fell in love with NFTs. Once NFTs came out, it completely changed my perception of life. Pretty much, I'll leave it to you like that. And so I started to investigate it more, understand it, talk to the attorneys around me. What are the risks involved in this? How I can help the space to grow? What do clients need? And then I started to basically put my hat in the arena and start applying for jobs and start working in different areas. I advised a couple of startup businesses, and then I landed a pretty interesting job with a company that's called Block Asset, where I was the director of legal operations there internationally. And we were the only people to ever have Muhammad Ali's licensed NFT. Very proud of that. And then from there, I started to expand a little bit more. I'm no longer with Block Asset now, where I'm doing in a few areas. I'm working in the crypto industry. I'm working in the legal field where me and I have an associate of mine, Carlos Martinez, where we're basically working, a partner of mine, I should say, not associate. And we're working together to be able to understand the legal space, build up our legal knowledge, and really figure out where we're most needed. I'm also working in the events arena where I'm on the board of Hola Metaverso, which is I'll see you soon in Colombia. We're international, bringing Web3 together. And then I'm also working with Sazón. I put an event together with the Sazón team as a founding team a couple of months ago in New York, doing NFT NYC. And then I'm also even doing on the business aspect to it. So I'm working as head of client relations with a company called Neti Art, where we provide data and tools for users to make smarter decisions on their NFT purchases. So Web3 is my life. I don't do anything else.
Yeah, that's a wonderful background that you have, Pablo, and very, different areas that you cover and that you have experience in. And it's even more better that you have, legal background so that you're able to, provide that legal background to, different NFT projects.
Yeah.
So tell me, Pablo, what are some of the issues that you're seeing or like risk issues that you're seeing in the actual Web3 space? And I think we could start with, the biggest one, NFT. Those are the licenses that many people are still a little confused about. A lot of people still are not, certain about it. Many people just think that, you can just launch an NFT project and it's yours, and there's not really no legal issues attached to it. Could you tell us a little bit more about any of those issues pertaining to the NFT licenses?
Yeah, sure. So there's a myriad of issues, and I'm not an IP expert per se, but I do have a good amount of IP experience, and it's a matter of dealing with the licensing right of the IP rights. Traditionally, as we've lived most of our life in Web 2, right? Let's kind of break it down into the technology aspects to it, right? With Web 2, um, you do not own IP rights for what you purchased. So therefore, if I were to purchase a Jordan pair of sneakers, which I have a ton of them, um, I cannot create a Jordan restaurant. I cannot create another Jordan line derivative project of it. I can't create the Jordans with a Z. I just can't do that. I would get sued and I would lose my entire house. So basically, Web3 has been, the idea of that has been changing. Primarily with Bored Ape Yacht Club, they were very innovative in this, in that when you buy your NFT, you actually have the IP rights to that Bored Ape, right? So you're able to actually create a derivative project. You're able to create something from it, a brand from it. And we've seen that in the space where you have Bored and Hungry, which is a restaurant, a hamburger restaurant that's based in Los Angeles. I think it's Los Angeles, an area of Los Angeles. And with that, what happens is that the owners of the Bored Apes, they're able to actually use that, right? So you can actually put your face, your Bored Ape as your business. That's your brand. That's your logo. That's you. So the idea is behind that is that the identity of that Bored Ape is almost like your digital identity, and you can use that. And so it's blowing my mind just even talking to you about it, which I get so excited about it. Another aspect to it is that another great example is what's going on with Moonbirds recently, right? So kind of like on the flip side of that, Moonbirds initially you had those rights as well too, but recently they decided to change that and basically create basically put the IP rights in the public domain. So in other words, anybody can actually go and copy and paste the Moonbird and create a whole project from it, and there's nothing that can be done about it. Now, I'll get to the risk in 1 minute. Just I'm trying to explain the context of it.
Oh, it's good.
The differences of that is that with Moonbirds, I don't need to be a holder. I don't need to be an owner. I can just go do whatever I want with it because it's in the public domain. It's in the public, right? It's called a Creative Commons license, right? And so with that, it's a completely different mindset. So you have to understand when you're buying into an NFT project, specifically if you're spending a large sum of money, you need to read the terms of service from the website, because that's where it will say if you're going to get this IP license that grants you the ability to create your own brands, or if it's going to be a Creative Commons where anybody could do it, and basically you don't have mentally you don't have IP rights in it, right? Because it's basically everybody's has the IP rights to it. So there's understandable with licensing, there's differences there to understand. And the third element to this is that me as let's say I have a Bored Ape, right? What can I do with the Bored Ape? The Bored Ape just right now is sitting in my wallet, and yeah, it may be raising money, but I can't do anything else with it, right? So there's been a couple of startups, most notably Bored Jobs, that has come out and said, well, we'll license your ape. They're the middleman, right? So you can actually license this ape that you own the IP rights to, and we'll find a person that wants to pay you to license your ape. And so I've done a couple of those deals, and it's really super interesting. So there's a few different areas that are becoming innovative in this space, and it always boils down to you need to read the terms of service. As with any major purchase in your life, it's very good to consult an attorney. It's very good to consult an accountant. It doesn't change in the NFT space. And reading those terms of service will really give you a better idea of what you're getting into.
Yeah, definitely. And going back to the Bored Ape Yacht Club's Bored and Hungry, Houston rapper. I'm from Houston. So Bun B, Trill Burgers, he actually went out there with Houston when they did their whole grand opening, and they collaborated making some burgers out there. So the burgers I heard are really great. I think there's also a coffee brand that has been, so many different things that are, coming out from the derivatives. So a lot of
coffee, they're a client of mine, actually. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So
awesome.
Yeah, definitely. So I have had some questions in the past from others not in the Web3 space or not familiar with Web3 who have asked me, do you not believe that a derivative of the brand is going to kind of dilute the brand name. So what would you say to that?
So I'm gonna kind of remove my legal hat a little bit here and put more of my business, right, strategist hat on. At first, I would agree 1,000%. I'm not gonna lie to you, and I would say, well, and I thought to myself, well, why are they doing this? You're diluting your brand. You're basically saying that my brand is what? It's not strong enough that I'm gonna allow you to actually do that. That is a mindset that we have grown up in, right? IP is very strong. You're protecting your work. It's important to trademark your logo, trademark your company. You have to do this because it's your work. It's your right to do this. And after I really got into the weeds of it and understood that there's another viewpoint on that, right? And the other viewpoint is that, well, you're not diluting your brand. What you're doing is you're actually creating these mini franchises off of your brand, right? And so if you look at Bored Ape Yacht Club, all of those derivative works have all they've done is um, really strengthen the actual like mother brand, right? Like that's really what they've done. And so you have all of these other side projects like the coffee projects, like the restaurant. And what they're doing is that they're just bringing value back to the holder of the actual Bored Ape, but they're also growing the mystique, right, of the overall brand. And I think that Yuga Labs is the gold standard as far as I'm concerned. And there's a bunch of people in this NFT space that it's either Yuga or nothing, right? The Yuga maxis. They don't want to buy anything else. It's just Yuga. And I would say to that it's a valid viewpoint, right? It is a very valid viewpoint. I don't want to dilute this. Why would I dilute my brand in creating this? And I think that the industry is changing, and the NFT space, we're in such an innovative space. We're so early that nobody really knows what the end game is going to be, and nobody really has the answer to that. But my personal opinion is that I think it only helps the brand in this specific space. If we do that in general, I don't think it helps your brand. But because we're in this specific niche Web3 space, there's a lot of money into it. We're very early and we're growing every day. I think it does help the brand.
Yeah, so going to the branding and the IP, all of that has to do also with the legal side, right? The legal side has to protect the IP, has to protect the brand. So it's very interesting also too that the actual IP rights are associated with our actual IP, right? Our address. And that's, associated to our wallet. So I know, Pablo, there's major scams going on in this, particular space because we are so early on, and protection against these scams is a big, big, big concern of a majority of, people who are not in Web3 and are not familiar with this space. So what, have you seen in the space that you would actually, speak on to the scams that are pertaining, and how should people protect themselves?
Sure. So I'm glad you brought that up because I think of it more personally, right? I think of it where my father is in his 70s now, right? And my father is big on Facebook. He's all over the place on Facebook. He, tells everything. Unfortunately, there's pictures of me when I'm like 2 years old on Facebook. I don't want anybody to see. The whole world has seen it because of my dad. My dad consistently every week
I
either
need to add him.
yeah, right. Consistently every week, either posts on Facebook or sends me messaging, tell me about these scams that he's getting in Facebook. Nothing to do with Web3, right? So we have to remember that the scams are out there in every industry. There's bad actors. No matter what you do, no matter where you go, there's bad actors. And so with the Web3 space specifically, you're going to get a lot of messages, as I'm sure we all do when we go through our Twitter. I think recently it's been like, oh, I'm a student, a messaging saying I'm a student, I need help, blah, 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 blah. Click this link so you can help me. Number one, big tip. Number one, do not click links from anybody that you don't know. If it's not a direct message from somebody that you're friendly with, that you have conversations with, that you speak with, right, on a regular basis, if it's not in something like that, then I would say, okay, click on it. But if it's just going to be a random message from somebody that you don't know, there's scams behind it that will drain your wallet. There's scams behind it, people asking you to send them your wallet address so they can send you a free NFT, a free mint, you won this waitlist award, blah, 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 blah. don't click on any of that. I have some really, I'm not a technologist. I'm not deep into the dev space, but I have a really good group of friends and a good bunch of connections that are, and they keep consistently telling me that if you see any links that you have that are coming towards you that you do not know, don't click them whatsoever, please. So I would say that that's the biggest tip of what's going on right now, to be careful with those links.
No, yeah, those are some great tips. Definitely don't need to be clicking on any links if you're joining and you're new. Now, I know that the legal risks are associated with many other projects in the space also related to Web3, such as the metaverse. So, AR, virtual reality, it is a major, we're seeing major projects coming out with AR, VR, even some NFT projects as well. So, Pablo, can you tell us a little bit about the risk issues that are also pertaining to the metaverse that we're seeing right now?
Sure. So I'm going to start with, I'll get into the metaverse, but I'm going to start with just legal 101, right? Because we're the mindset is that we're decentralized. The mindset is that we're getting to decentralization. We're not there, right? There's still laws you have to abide by. There's still procedures. There's still regulations that exist that we just can't circumvent and go over. So I'm going to just say legal 101, any industry that you're in, particularly in the NFT space, particularly with the metaverse, particularly with crypto, you need to create an entity, first of all. If you're going to be a serious business person in this space, create an entity. There's various options. You could do a limited liability company. You can do a corporation. The differences between that are that dealing with tax issues. Basically, corporations allow you to bring on investors. LLCs are very limited towards that. But there's various options that you can review and go after and understand, okay, what's the best situation for me? Now, with that said, if you don't have that specific entity that's created, you're at risk for a lot of liability. Corporations were created to be able to create a level of protection between your business and your personal. If you do not have any entity, if you do not have anything, you are personally at risk and personally liable for anything that happens with your company. So if you create an NFT project, if you're doing something specifically in the metaverse and the company gets sued, if you don't have an entity, they're suing you personally, where they can come after your house. They can come after your personal assets. If you have that layer of protection, all they can do is go after the company's assets. So that's number one. I would definitely say that. Number two is that there are going to be some data privacy issues that we have to work through. Recently, and this is a really touchy subject, so I'm going to tread lightly on it, right? Recently, there have been some cases of potential sexual assaults in the metaverse, which is a whole new area that we don't have enough case law to fully understand what to do with it, right? And recently, and I don't really know if this pertains to this because I haven't done officially the full homework on this, but Durex, the condom company, actually has metaverse. They filed for metaverse trademarks recently. So it's an interesting step, right? When we're discussing sexual assault, when we're discussing these type of like privacy issues, right? That's what I mean in general, in privacy. How does that affect the metaverse? How do we get into that? So there's some issues there that are still being worked out. And as far as like the general consensus is that we're very early and we need to just have our footing based in Web 2 still, because there's laws there in place, and just be guided by what we have. And we don't know, honestly, we don't know officially how they're going to be affected in the metaverse because we haven't really fully built out that metaverse yet. We haven't fully had the case law that we have in the real world, right, to be able to kind of fall back on. And so I would just tread lightly when it comes to this, because there's so much case law to build out that we don't have a lot of answers. It really depends on the situation.
Absolutely. There's not enough case law. And I'm glad that you brought that up. One thing I did find also very interesting about the legal issues in Web3 is specifically the statutes of limitations. And right now it's 14 years.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, so basically you can come in here to the space, think you're going to scam, think you're going to get away, when in reality, the law is going to catch up with you 14 years later. And that it is possible to still go and file, a lawsuit against you, and you can be, come against criminal charges in 14 years. And I think many people are not aware of that. And that is something that's really, important that people, need to be aware about.
I agree. And another to add on to that is that dealing with securities issues, right? We have seen it recently that a lot of major projects have filed for bankruptcy, right? Have been shut down by the SEC, have been fined. Major tornado recently. There's been a lot of projects that we have seen. Coinbase is being investigated by the SEC. So when you talk about statute of limitations, I also want to make sure that people understand that these major companies, billion-dollar industries, right? Billion-dollar companies, it's still, the SEC can still reach into them today and say, you have to shut down your business today, and you have to pay this fine for all the money that you made 3 years ago, 4 years ago, right? Because you did not register as a security. So the thing is that it's a very risky space that we're in. And I don't say that to scare people, because even though it's risky, I still believe in it. Every day I wake up and this is the space that I want to work in. And this is the conversations that I want to have, because it's a novel area of law. We don't know what the next step is. So with that said, right, again, make sure you consult with proper legal consultation before you get into this space fully, as you would do with any other business. Don't just take it on your back and say, I'm going to Google a couple of things and I'll get into it. No, it's a very risky space. And I'm blessed to be a part of a Web3 attorney group. We have our own group chat, and we basically discuss these issues every day. And 90% of the time, the issues that we discuss in our group chat, we've actually been ahead of the press. So before the press even gets to it, we've already discussed it. We've analyzed it. We tried to figure out the answers. What's the next steps? So I wanted to let the public know with that there are a really solid group of people, amazing attorneys that are working every day behind the scenes to understand the space, to be able to grow out their legal knowledge, to be able to figure out how we can guide people best.
No, yeah, that's definitely great. I think that many attorneys are, discovering the space and discovering that there's a need for, protection against these type of issues that are arising from the Web3 legal space. Many people just jump into the space without really realizing what they're doing. And then it's going to be an issue later on. And it's like, how are you going to protect yourself, right? And the space, and also to go back to what you talked about, risk issues. If you don't take the risk, then you don't gain the reward. And there's much reward in this space, especially for us who are the early adopters. But it's always important to have someone like yourself, Pablo, who's able to touch on and actually enlighten us about those areas that, we may be clouded because we're the founder or we're the builder, the developer, and we are, focused in a different mindset or a different perspective. But someone like yourself, like you said, you're in the legal space, you have legal consultation with your own group of, associate and friends, that you guys talk about these issues, because it's important that you are, ahead of the actual media and ahead of the actual people who are building in the space. So it's great to know that, that there is representation in the space like yourself here. So tell me, Pablo, if there is anything that you could, leave us with some wisdom, some nuggets, so that people are coming into the space and that, they need to learn or need to know, so that they can be aware about the risk issues with the legalities, what would you let us know?
I would definitely say that from the beginning, you have to create this entity. You have to take this business serious. Why do you want to take it serious? Because like you were saying, Christina, there's a lot of risk, but there's a whole lot of reward in this. We're early adopters. We're here from the beginning. This technology it's amazing. It's mind-blowing, right? And with that, there's going to come a lot of issues that we need to get through and hurdle through to be able to get to the next level, to the next step, to the next step. For the CEO of FTX, I think I'll kind of leave it with that. The CEO of FTX, he was talking about Solana the other day. I'm somewhat of a fan of Solana, somewhat not. Solana has their own issues as a blockchain, and he was insisting that the reason that the Solana blockchain has been going down so much is because they're pushing the limits, right? And they're testing and they're pushing forward to be able to do things that we have never done before. And that's a lot of the reasons why they're going down, because they need to do that. We need to be able to have those mistakes and those shutdowns so we can figure out how to solve them and go forward with it. It's interesting. I don't know if it's 100% correct, but it's an interesting way to look at it. And I just want to say that, this technology, it's changing the world already. It's going to continue to change the world. From my perspective, I live in Dominican Republic, from New York, born and raised in the Bronx, but I've been living in Dominican Republic the past 5 years in the Caribbean. And what I've seen with the technology is going to change, I feel, Latin America and the Caribbean first before it even gets to the United States. Recently, Colombia did a deal with Ripple where they actually have title registry on the blockchain. Never existed in the United States at all. And this is a huge issue in Latin America because a lot of the transactions of homes and property are just handshake deals, or they were done through family. So there's been a lot of corruption in between that. If a new president comes on, there's risk that you may lose your house, right? And unfortunately, our family members, we've seen that. And so now when you have this blockchain that says, no, this is the owner, this is the date, this is the time, this is who it is, it's a public blockchain, it's immutable, that's a great case study to show what we can do with this technology. So I just want to leave people hopeful that there are a lot of hurdles that we have to get through, but I really do feel that, at the end game, maybe when I'm an old man in a wheelchair or something, we'll be able to have a completely different conversation. But I think it's great, and I'm very hopeful for the space.
No, yeah, me too. I feel like when I'm an old lady here with you, I'm going to have you back on, because that's when we're really going to see how, our deeds, our land deeds and everything else is going to be on the blockchain, and it's going to be a whole different conversation of the protection of what we're leaving legacy behind and how our family is actually inheriting the blockchain, basically. Yeah.
You hit the nail on the head. How our family is inheriting the blockchain, what we're doing. And culturally, right, that's a big deal. There's a lot of issues with people of color, like myself, that basically that history has kind of been circumvented and told differently. With the blockchain, you can't do that, right? It's there, it's out, it's open, it's public. So there's definitely tons of technology, tons of use cases for this technology going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And the blockchain is only going to get stronger. It's only going to get better. And it's going to be where, legal representation is going to be your number one concern. And you should definitely seek legal counsel if you haven't, if you're interested. I know DAOs also are a big thing in the Web3 space and how DAOs are set up. And we are going to see how that is going to further play out, and it's going to develop as time passes by. Because in Web 2, a DAO is considered an actual business partnership. And so right now we're not seeing the legalities behind that, but I'm sure that's going to also develop as time passes.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I'm very glad you brought that up. I recently actually had a talk about that a few months ago in New York. DAOs are, I'm personally not 100% sold on them yet. I'm skeptic. And I say that because I think there needs to be more development built in that. There also needs to be a way that it could be more recognized in governments, right? And where does this fit into corporations and all that? And I think there's some great resources out there for anybody to read. Again, my goal in life really has always been to make the law accessible. Even as a cop, I felt the same way. These are laws that are ours that we need to understand. We can understand them. There's a couple of really great papers by A16Z, and I can actually send them to you in the chat, and we can add on to that, right? Where it's basically it's almost like the white papers of DAOs, what they are, how do they work, right? The protocol as opposed to the treasury, what that means. But the main thing, again, It all goes down to liability, and it all goes down to creating this entity. If you enter into a DAO and it's there is no type of paperwork, it's just it becomes in the United States instantly a general partnership. As a general partnership, every person that is part of that DAO becomes liable for whatever happens with the DAO. There's no level of protection. So I'm very glad you brought that up, because that's a really interesting point that I even learned as an attorney this year, right? So it's very interesting there.
Yeah, DAOs are, I mean, it's decentralized, autonomous. Yeah. And, but how is everyone going to join? And then how is everyone going to be left with the liability that is associated to this DAO if someone doesn't agree with something? So, and if they want to take it to court and the judge sees in their favor, it's going to affect everyone. And I don't believe that has actually, still been fully developed and understood by even DAOs themselves. So we haven't gotten there. Nobody's challenged it. And, people want to challenge other people. So you have to take it to court. You have to take it to the law. So that's really going to be something we are going to see. And yeah, we'll have to bring you back on, and we'll have to have another discussion on the DAO specifically as it develops and changes over time.
Yes, I'd love to. I've been reading very extensively with it. I haven't worked too much with DAOs. Obviously have a few friends and colleagues that are in DAOs, and I've always picked their brains as much as possible to really understand the space before I dive head first and say, well, I'm a DAO attorney and I can represent you. Like, I'm not at that point yet, but I do have a decent background in it, where I'd like to be able to have a conversation as to almost like sell me your DAO. Remember the guy on the internet that has that sign, right? That it's like, prove me wrong, blah, 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 blah. I feel that way right now with DAOs. It's like, I don't believe in DAOs, prove me wrong, right? And so I really welcome that conversation, because I do actually think that there's a lot of potential for it in the right industries. But I want to be able to have somebody come to me and sell me on it. This is why I'm going to create a DAO, and this is what I'm doing for the next 20 years. I personally haven't seen it yet. I'm probably wrong, but I haven't seen it yet. And I welcome that feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. That definitely is going to be good to see. And I'm glad you welcomed that. So since you're welcoming that, how about, Pablo, you let everyone know here, and we will be adding in the Apple podcast, you'll on Spotify, guys, I'll go ahead and add the links to those extra information resources that Pablo has talked about. But Pablo, where can our audience and people connect with you through social media?
Sure. I'm on Twitter, 15 times a day, probably. So my Twitter handle is Pablo Enrique ESQ, Pablo Enrique ESQ at the end of it. My website is PSEGARRAESQ.xyz. I know it sounds like a fumble of a bunch of letters, but it's not. PSegarraESQ.xyz. You can schedule a free consultation. We have a 20-minute conversation. Tell me your idea. Let me kind of go through the legalities of it and see where you're at. And then I can kind of consult you as to, okay, this requires a further conversation, or it may not. I've had a bunch of clients that come to me with their ideas, and it's really built out way better than they don't really need an attorney at this point. But others are saying, well, I'm at this point now that we're going to jump into this head first, and I need some consultation. And so you can find that through my website. My Calendly link is also in my profile of my Twitter handle. And those are the two best places to find me.
Awesome. That is so great. And also to social media for LinkedIn. Where can they find you on LinkedIn?
Sure. It's the same name, Pablo Segarra ESQ. And I'll add it as well, too, just so that everybody has it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Pablo, for joining us on today's episode. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I believe that also, too, the audience is going to get some great value. We covered some really great topics and issues that are pertaining to the Web3 space with legal issues. And so, guys, I just want to thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode and lending me your ears. Peace and love as always. Thank you so much, Pablo.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this, and keep it going. I love it. Love your energy. Love the space. Love that you want to push this forward. So let's do it together. Appreciate you.
Awesome. Great. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode. Peace and love.
Peace.